You're listening to Dropping Pins, a story-based learning series from the Okayest Hunter podcast, hosted by Derek Melkor, and aimed at helping you hone your whitetail hunting skills. You'll hear the aha moments when known and unknown proven whitetail killers started consistently putting mature bucks on the ground.
Hey everybody, welcome back. The Dropping Pins podcast, hosted by yours truly, Derek Melkor, is kicking off for this season. I know it's June 22nd currently. We had a pretty good lapse in podcast there, but for good reason. Things got busy, focused on the family after hunting season, and just decided to kind of focus on what was important. And everybody who I wanted to talk to, all the hunting gurus and experts that you folks would like to hear from, were pretty much chilling. Oh, hold on one second here. I got to make sure. Yeah, okay. I think we're doing okay. I got a notification from our recording that something was going live, but I think we're all right. Not sure. I'll get a message here in a minute if we're not. But yeah, everyone who, we wanted to talk to and get information and stories from for you guys for the series was just coming off a huge hunting season, and their wives and families were sick of hearing them talk about it and stealing up time. So we just decided to take a little break from it. And now that we're mere months away from hunting season kicking back off, archery season set to open in, the lesser part of 3 months for most states, which is pretty freaking awesome. We're starting to get deer on our mind, which is pretty unbelievable. So I'm going to do a quick little recap for you guys. Today it's just me. I have no guests, but I do have some guests lined up for the next few weeks. So hopefully those start ramping up. I've got a long list of people that I want to talk to, just got to make time to get scheduled and sit down and recording. So hopefully we've got a good season to get you guys amped up, get some information for you that could help you this next season and overall in your hunting career, because that's what our goal here is with Dropping Pins. For those of you who are new, or maybe you just haven't heard this part yet, this segment of the Okayest Hunter podcast, the Drop Pins segment, was the brainchild of course, Eric, founder of the Okayest Hunter Network, him and Tyler. And Eric had this idea that a little bit more serious whitetail talk than our normal Okayest Hunter podcast, which is a lot of banter and camaraderie and bullshitting, which is a lot of fun. But for those who are looking to up their game a little bit more and have some serious insight from everyday hunters, the idea was that I would sit down and talk with some folks who are consistent big buck killers, guys who eat and breathe this stuff, who think about it every waking moment, similar to myself. And instead of just talking tactics, blanket tactics that, most other podcasts are doing, the idea was in Dropping Pins, they would be dropping pins, milestones in their personal hunting careers of moments or hunts or encounters that kind of changed the way they thought about what they were doing in the woods, whether that's scouting, whether that's hanging trail cameras, whether that's in-season scouting, post-season scouting, or of course during the hunting season. What are those little things that separate the high-level elite? And I don't mean elite as in like show business people. I'm talking elite as in true woodsmen who understand their craft, who understand their quarry, the whitetail deer, specifically mature bucks for this podcast. But what are those people doing that's different? And with the story-based is what we're going for, is that hopefully you'll get some insight into what they were doing at that moment, why they were doing it, what was kind of the thought process behind it, and then what happened that really keyed them off on making changes to their thought process and to what they're doing. So that's kind of our goal here on Dropping Pins. Like I said, if you're new, that's what we're going for. It's very educational. I try to pull out as many details as possible from guests. Like, okay, they're going to say they went into a stand. I'm going to ask them, well, what was the wind doing that day? What was the terrain like? Why did you choose that location over other locations? Those little details are what I find make the biggest differences, and they're most often left out in the kind of blanket tactic talk podcasts. So that's what we're trying to go for. That was Eric's idea. I'm happy to host it because I love talking big deer. And hearing from successful people, last season already, just the folks that I got to talk to, I think we put out 22 or 23 episodes, and it really changed my perspective. Just the things that kept coming up really helped. So if you haven't caught any of those or you haven't watched all of them, there are some really good guests that we had on there, and a huge range of different styles and different locations. So that's kind of a cool thing that we're going to try to do here. As far as myself, yeah, it's been a busy one. It's kind of crazy that me personally, I'm already like full on into whitetail mode. I've got 2 trail cameras out. It's like 95 or 96 degrees yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So like the weather's not really screaming, hey, let's get into a whitetail frenzy. But those of us who are diehard, July is just a week away. And we know that as soon as July hits, that's kind of kickoff to velvet season. And those trail cameras can tell you a lot of information about what kind of deer you're going to have to chase this year. So yeah, I'm amped. I'm jacked up. I'm really excited for this season to kick off for a few different reasons, which we'll get into. But it's been a really good year. Last season, I had a great season. Ended up getting 3 bucks. Got a opportunity to go to Oregon with Lyndon Lauren and with Greg Tubbs from the OKS Hunter podcast and OKS Fisher, and a bunch of Lyndon's buddies out there, which was truly awesome. Like once in a lifetime trip. The area was beautiful. Greg and I were both lucky enough to take blacktail bucks, which is pretty cool. I actually worked on mine a little bit today, which is fun, and I'll show you guys in a second here, but got to take that buck on a rifle hunt and do some long range shooting, which was new for me, but really awesome hunt. And then was lucky enough to take an archery buck here in Wisconsin on public, decent 10-pointer, November 4th. And then it was the week of our Wisconsin, we have a 9-day rifle season, and it was, I believe, no, it might've been Friday. So the final Friday of our season, went into a piece of public that I had walked a little bit last season, hung a stand, and didn't even get it fully hung, the latitude stuff. I was still hanging the platform when I heard this buck coming through the buck brush, and whipped my gun off my shoulder and took a nice 8-point buck during gun season. So 3 public land bucks last year. None of them were huge, but I was a very happy camper. So that went really well. And then like normal, the postseason scouting, the shed hunting started off. And last year I was lucky enough to find shed antlers in 4 different states, which was a first for me. Almost made it 5 with a trip up to Michigan, but that never ended up happening. But I did find a shed. I found multiple sheds in Wisconsin, here in my home state. Found a pile of sheds in Illinois, mostly on private ground on our buddy Bo from Ghost Bucks. Had a blast. We go down there every spring, a group of guys, and we get to shed hunt some of his properties, his leases. And man, we found some beauties down there. He's got some great bucks to chase this fall. But that's more just, it's so freaking fun. Shed hunting with buddies on properties, you're going to find them. It's a blast. So we found some sheds in Illinois, found some sheds. Went down to Iowa. So me and 2 buddies are going to be putting in for Iowa tags, not this fall, but the following fall. So we started doing some scouting. I went down, I think I probably walked 4 or 5 different properties so far, smaller ones, but found some really good stuff. Picked up a couple sheds down there in Iowa. That was really early in the shed season, so I'm assuming most of the deer were still holding, but I was able to pick up a couple. And then picked up a couple mule deer sheds down in Arizona while family was down there on spring break. So we were enjoying some family time with my wife's grandparents, but of course, man, if you got an itch, you got to scratch it. And these Arizona desert muleys, I'd been seeing some pictures, watching some videos, and I had to go try my luck. So I just looked up some national forests not far away from where we were staying, and got out and did a walk, and ended up finding like 3 or 4 sheds, a deadhead, which is pretty cool. I flew 1 antler back with me. It's sitting on the TV stand back there. One was pretty nice. But yeah, really good spring as far as shed hunting went. Had a lot of fun. Got to walk with a lot of different buddies, so that was really cool. One of the sheds we'll get to here in a minute. But yeah, other than that, tons and tons of antler repairs. That's kind of my side gig. So if you know anybody who's got busted up deer antlers that they, shoot a good buck, racks all busted up, or shed antlers. I've been doing a lot of that. I've got one absolute magnum elk staring me down who I got to replace the fifth and the end of the beam on. It's going to be like a 4-pound rebuild, just that end. It's huge. And then a smaller elk. And I just picked up a set of sheds from a guy who needs a little bit of repair. But that was a lot of my spring, was working on antlers. Got most of those out the door. And then with this summer, got to do an archery shoot up at Ben Wellens. It was the barnyard shoot, which is basically family and friends up at the Wellens farm in Pound, Wisconsin. Ben set up a course over a mile. I think we shot 28 different 3D targets, all different ranges from 50 on in. Had a ton of fun doing that. Went up and shot with my buddy Adam. It was an absolute blast. And to help hone in on the archery skills, I've also signed up for a 3D summer league with good buddy Matt Strime from Weathered Oaks Game Call, co-host of the OKS Fisher podcast. So we've been shooting bows. So that's going well because, man, I haven't shot a league in a little while, and I'm already feeling so much more confident with my shot, which, as you know, as we get closer to season, is a huge, huge part of our success. So yeah, it's been busy. It's been good. We just went up this last week during the week since I've got summers off, which we'll get to also. I want to forget that. But I took my kids up to our family cabin and we went and picked up a rifle right here. This little guy, if you're not watching the video version of it, got a beautiful little Savage Axis 2. This is in a 350 Legend. And I got one of my old scopes mounted on there. It's the compact version, which has a shorter, more compact stock. It's got a pretty big butt on the end here. Very soft, very squishy. It does extend it a little bit, but man, does that make shooting it sweet. It's got that nice drop down stock, the Accu trigger, which we've adjusted and played with. But this is going to be my son's rifle for youth season, hopefully this year. So we got to do a little plinking with that. He got to shoot 5, 6, 7 rounds out of that this past week with the idea that this is going to be his first hunting season, if he still wants to, which I'm really excited about and has kind of changed my thought process around some different things. So that's pretty darn cool. He was so excited to shoot that gun. So I'm excited to potentially get him in the woods, which is, like I said, kind of altered some plans for the summer. Today I was just in full deer mode, man. I was working on elk. I whipped together a couple of these antler plaques. These are for anything that I decide not to mount or don't Euro. This is kind of a tradition that my dad had started here. I'm going to swing the camera around here. I got a pile of them over here for all the smaller bucks. But these antler plaques are pretty cool. My dad's got, oh my gosh, like $30 on these up at our family cabin. This is a style that's kind of cool. We got like a recessed little 4x6 cutout area to put a photo with it. So all the ones I've got up there, you can pick a photo from the hunt. I almost always pick a photo of the drag out or whoever was with me on the recovery and put that in there as a good memory. And then I did a little bit of work on for each buck. This is a little blacktail from Oregon. And this is one that I got this buck 3 years ago during gun season. I just never got around to putting them on a plaque. But I make these little cutouts for them out of just plywood and then plaster of Paris over them. And then what I'll do is all these ones on the wall, I've just got some red velvet fabric that I get at like Hobby Lobby. And I'll wrap that up, staple it, and then that'll get mounted to the plaque here, print out a photo, and that'll go up on the wall soon. So while I was staining all these plaques and playing with my plaster of Paris, man, these stories started coming back through my mind and the hunts for these bucks. And I was just getting crazy, just getting all excited for hunting season. So hopefully you guys are getting excited too. If you haven't started thinking about it, wow, what a perfect time to get going. All this public land talk in the political landscape, man, can't say it enough. It's going around on social media like crazy. But if you have not called, emailed, sent messages to your state representatives, your senators, please do that and do it often. Like don't just stop with one call and one message. Called Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson today, left another round of messages. We can't let this public land sales go any further than it's already gone. So yeah. All right. So plans. Believe it or not, I've already got 2 trail cameras soaking out on some public land here in Wisconsin. It's unusual for me. Normally, I don't get anything out till after 4th of July. Usually 4th of July weekend, we go up to the cabin. Well, I shouldn't say weekend. 4th of July, that holiday, whenever it falls. Usually we go up at the cabin by my parents, northeastern Wisconsin. And usually Dad and I will hop on the Enduro. He's got 2 Enduros up there, and we fill up the backpacks with trail cameras and jet off into the national forest, and we go hang cameras around July 4th. But I've already got 2 in the woods. My trail cam strategy is changed a little bit this year, which I'll get into, and the hunting areas this year. So with the strategy changing, what I'm talking about is this year I'm not just scouting for myself, but as I said, my son's going to be hunting ideally. So after I hung those first 2 cameras, like, man, I got to get some of these cameras in positions where I think he's going to have the best opportunity for success. And I'm just so excited to try to get him on a deer. So my trail cam philosophy or my thought process has definitely changed. Me and a couple buddies will be going down to Illinois to hunt the public again. We're going to go a little bit later this year. We'll be November 7th through 13th. So we should be in some more of that rut time zone, which, to be honest, the change sounded good in my brain because we haven't had the best weather the last couple of years. It's been really, really hot a little bit earlier in the season. We usually go down the end of October, but that's the time frame that I feel most confident in, that pre-rut, and rut is a little bit tougher for me. So we'll see what happens down there, but usually I bring down cameras to Illinois in the summer, and I usually hang a couple cell cameras down there just because, you know, it's hours away. It's pretty far away. So getting that intel without having to get down there. And then when I do get down there, if I only have 3 or 4 days to hunt, spending that time going to check cameras is valuable. But man, if I already know what's on those cameras and I can spend that time scouting, it's way more well spent. So normally I hang some cell cameras down there, but this year I don't think I'm going to do that. We do plan on doing a summer trip down there to do some scouting, do some stand site prep and hang cameras, but I don't think I'm going to bring cell cameras down there. I might bring 1 or 2, but I think I'm going to keep most of them up here for Wisconsin just to keep a little bit better tabs on areas for my son to hopefully harvest his first deer. So I'll be bringing down some SD card cameras. I do have 2 bucks that are in the top of my mind for targeting down in Illinois. One of them I found a shed off of really early this year. This nice 6-point side, which I got a good buddy who should recognize this one, who will also be hunting this buck this year, I'm sure. But I found this buck, his shed, gosh, when was it? December 27th, I believe. So before the new year, he had already dropped. And me and the other fella who has been hunting this buck were a little bit concerned that maybe he had got hit in like the late shotgun season and wasn't doing well. But we have no reason to believe he's dead. So we're going to hope that he's alive. Should be pretty damn huge this year. So that's one of the deer that I'll be targeting. We'll definitely hang some cameras for him. And I've got another really nice, kind of trashy, I don't want to say non-typical because he doesn't have drop tines or anything, but he's got a bunch of junk going on all over that I had a fair amount of pictures of last year. I have no idea if that deer got shot. Didn't find sheds off of him, but either of those 2 bucks would be awesome to get on camera to verify that are alive and to chase this fall. So that's exciting. That'll be coming up within the next month. We'll head down to Illinois and we'll try to make something happen down there. I've got areas that I'm trying to hone in on. There's a lot of land down there that, you know, you just want to walk as much as you possibly can. But man, over the last couple of years, I just feel like I've spread myself pretty thin. Last year, I tried to close it in a little bit tighter to really learning a couple specific areas. This year, I'm going to try to learn a couple areas that have a little bit more terrain, hopefully some terrain traps, some funnels, some ridge systems that during the rut, when we're going to be down there in November, I can try to capitalize on predicting where these bigger deer are going to be moving. Some of the stuff I was in last year where that kind of non-typical deer was in is relatively flat. What I do like about that area is there are defined thickets for bedding, full of multiflora rows. They're just really nasty. Having those defined thickets are really nice because you can kind of determine where the deer are going to be bedding. But as far as travel goes, when bucks are going from one to another, it was pretty wild, like just haphazard. Like with flat terrain, they can walk wherever they want. So it was a little bit harder to estimate where they're going to be traveling through checking bedding. I'm hoping that with some of these little bit bigger ridge systems I'm looking at, that I can kind of hone in on finding some steep gullies, some heads of drains up near the top of the ridge, use the wind and thermals to my advantage, and getting some weird little nooks and crannies that maybe are overlooked by other people, but still use terrain to force buck movement. So that's kind of the plan for Illinois. I got two buddies who are coming with me that we'll go over and kind of discuss everybody's strategy and what we're doing and try to figure that out. I'm excited to get cameras up. I'm not excited to hang them. There's so much stinging nettle, poison ivy down there. Everything's trying to pick you, stab you, poke you. So that trip usually sucks. It's usually well over 90 degrees when we go down there, but it is what it is. Cold beer after a long day of 90-degree poison ivy trail cam hanging still tastes cold and yummy. So I'm excited to go down there with the guys and get some stuff set up down there. Excuse me while I pause. Yes, so trail cameras here in Wisconsin. Normally, I have a system that I like to use, which is my summer trail cameras are not necessarily geared towards summer pictures. And what I mean by that is, yes, I do get summer pictures, of course. But where I'm typically hanging my cameras is in tight to fall buck bedding areas. And when I say buck bedding areas, I'm just talking about general areas. I'm typically not over buck beds. I'm trying not to hang a camera any closer to a buck bed than what I would hunt. So the idea that I typically go with is in thick cover, wherever rub lines are popping out of thick bedding areas, wherever there's clusters of rubs on the outer perimeter, typically where that cover, whatever cover that deer is using for bedding, typically where that cover starts to change, transition, or drop off, they usually will hold up there before darkness falls, and they'll usually make some sort of sign. That's where you find these clusters of rubs. In early season, it's many times on alders, it's many times on willow trees, small stuff, and they'll just rip it up. And that's where you'll find a cluster of alders coming out, and there'll be 7 or 8 rubs all along the cluster. That tells me that deer is just working his way out of security cover. He's waiting till it's dark, and he's just killing time, making rubs, building up neck muscles for the rut. That's the spot where I want to start to monitor. I usually hang them in a way that I can access that camera when I go in to hunt. So I'm not crossing any trails. I like to make mock scrapes in those areas so I can position the deer. You can't ever position the deer, but if I can put that deer in front of my camera in a way that I don't have to walk over that or past that to check the camera, that's obviously ideal. So normally I'm going to find a spot where they naturally want to be. I'll hang some sort of licking branch, rip up the ground, and then I'll have that camera set in a spot where if I come in September 20th, our season usually opens second week, third week of September. So let's say September 20th is opener. If I've got an area that I like, I should be able to slip in, stand on my back, check that camera card, and if there is good movement on there, something I want to hunt, there's been a nice buck moving through there within the last 5 or 6 days in daylight, with where I'm putting my cameras, I should be able to jump up into the tree that I'd already kind of thought about without ever crossing that area that I expect the deer to come from. That's my general strategy for trail cameras this year. I'm switching it up a little bit. I still have a lot of that going on. And I mean, I only have 2 cameras up, but in my mind, I've already planned out where like 20 of them are going, right? Because this is what I think about all the time. So I've already planned out where many of them are going, and a lot of them are in that very same kind of style. But I've also branched out a lot in my post scouting this spring. The area that I had been targeting the last 3 years, I'll say 3 to 4 years, it got a gigantic influx in pressure this past season. So what I noticed on a lot of my cameras was obviously a lot more people. I saw a lot more cameras, saw a lot more guys hunting, and naturally with that, the number of good buck pictures I got went way down. Still same number of good bucks, especially early before that pressure really hit. Those bucks were still in there, and I think they always will be, but they definitely shifted and adjusted away from some of that pressure. So I was kind of surprised before the season that there wasn't more. So it makes sense that there was definitely more pressure this last season. So I adjusted. I went and scouted areas that were further away and some that were closer, still close to that general vicinity that I had been in. But I tried to branch out as much as I could. And in that process, I found some really promising spots I'm really excited about. But also, I found some areas that I think will be good, but I really don't know. I know good bucks will still be in that area that I previously had hunted, but in many of the new spots that I'm looking to set up and hunt, I do have to kind of collect inventory, if you will, or aim for more summer pictures. Not that buck's going to necessarily be there in fall, but I want to know what's around there. And a lot of these areas, what I've noticed in the past 5 years is if I get that picture in the summer of a good buck, I'm going to he'll still be around in early October, late September. So I haven't had a big problem with deer shifting out of the area. That's not really what I've seen. A lot of them are staying right back in those little thickets, those little honey holes that keep them safe. They're not going up and bedding on the edge of a cornfield or a soybean field early season. So what I'm doing with these other cameras is setting up in more traditional summer travel areas. So one that I just set up last week that I think will probably be doing fantastic, especially yesterday, today, and tomorrow with this hot weather, is on a creek. And it's got a couple things going for it. Summertime, any waterway, you're always going to have good action. Deer want to cool down, deer want to drink, deer want to escape bugs. So what I did on this one is the way this property lays out, there's limited tree and brush cover. Okay. So there's a lot of wetlands, a lot of cattails, a lot of grass. And then there is some trees. There definitely is, but they're not all over. So they're, weird little organic shapes and like fingers. None of it's structured. Okay. It's all like grassy wetland. They grew wherever high ground was. So what I did was I kind of made a loop around. I looked on the map at where any fingers of brush, trees, even like fingers of higher grass through cattails came close to the waterway, just assuming deer are going to follow those higher edges, or especially those wooded edges, to cross the creek, to go across the creek onto another property. So I found a nice finger, went right up toward the creek. Okay, yep, went and checked. Perfect. Okay, here's a big trail going down, crossing. I can see it going up the other side of the creek. Okay, that looks good. Go down another little way, another trail on the other side of that finger of wood. So you got one trail on one side, one trail on the other side. They both cross the creek very close to each other. And then they're both going up on the other side. I can see where trails are splitting. Okay, this looks like a good spot. Plenty of fresh tracks. Deer going across the water. And then as soon as I got a little bit closer to the creek, I was just looking for trails crossing. Then I decided to kind of inspect the area. How would I hang a camera here? Where would I face it? Which trail looks better? Blah, blah, blah. I noticed kind of the second part, which makes this a really good trail cam setup, is that there's a sandbar or like a sand flat that runs about 80 yards in the creek right across from these crossings. So the crossings are there because of the edge of cover. The sandbar There's a little bit of deeper water right where those trails drop down by me. And then there's a sandbar, and it had all kinds of seaweed and aquatic vegetation growing up around it. That sandbar, and you can go back and listen to Gary Grunow on Dropping Pins talk about this, but that sandbar is going to be a natural place for those deer to walk to, because they don't just cross creeks, they walk up and down them a lot. And if you have a sandbar running 80 or 90 yards down that creek with aquatic vegetation, you can bet your ass those deer are going to come out, get some wind in their face on the creek, get a drink, and they're going to feed on that aquatic vegetation. That stuff's super high in all sorts of minerals and all the good stuff growing in the creek. They're going to eat that, and they're just going to cruise up and down that. So I got a couple good things going there, but that's kind of the tactic that I'm using on some of the new properties, is to find summer locations. On that same property, though, I've got a fall location with a camera on it. Back in the thick stuff, I made a big mock scrape. There's a couple old rubs there. I mean, there's going to be a couple deer pictures on there this summer, but I don't expect that to heat up at all till mid-September. Then I think bucks are going to start piling in there. Once that velvet comes off and those bucks start to get a little bit more aware of their surroundings, meaning they want to be tucked back in a little bit more cover, I think that spot's going to heat up. So I've got one kind of waiting that's back in the thick. That's probably not going to check that, maybe once in August. And then I'm going to leave that until the next time I go hunt. The summer one, I can pop in, check that real easy. My camera is right above the water. You know, I'll get anything crossing there. So I'll be able to tell what kind of deer are going in and out of the property, and hopefully get a couple good looks at them with that sandbar there. So that is kind of the plan for the trail cams. I'm going to do that on a couple other properties where I kind of have a camera tucked in to where I think there's, you know, some good historical buck sign. I'm obviously a huge proponent of reading rubs and using rubs to determine where to hunt. So there'll be probably, you know, I'll set them up in duos or trios where I have at least one camera on historical buck sign showing fall movement. Back in the thick stuff, probably make a couple mock scrapes. Big fan of that for getting deer to come in front of the camera. And then probably have cameras set up in places where I just think I'll be able to get some summer pictures where our buck's going to be moving. So that's kind of my plan. The Wisconsin ones here, like I said, be sprinkling cell cameras through multiple different properties, trying to figure out, of course, a couple big bucks, but also just where are there some bucks cruising, living, hanging out, so that when that early October youth season rolls around, my son's got a real good chance at knocking something down. And we're not just looking for a buck. We'll probably shoot a doe, shoot whatever comes out, whatever gets his heart beating. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. As far as bucks here go this season, I got a couple bucks on that property that I know well that I think probably made it, that I would love to catch up to, but I'm actually more excited about some of these spots that I scouted this past spring and winter, that I just am excited to try out these new spots. I get bored quick hunting the same areas, and it's already been a number of years I've been hunting this area. I haven't pulled one out. I've come really close, but I'm just really excited about trying some of these new spots. So I've already got in my mind a couple areas where the cell cam will work out perfect, because it's pretty tight in to some buck bedding, a long way from my entry point. So the cell cams just kind of make sense there. But what I'm not going to have the opportunity to do is to like stack cell cams. I've talked to 2 or 3 guys in this past postseason who do this very effectively, but I mean, are using many cell cams kind of in one area in particular to kind of hone in on a particular buck, and then go in once you've got, you know, all sorts of information real time and make a kill. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm going to have like one cell cam per property in a spot I think is going to be good to try to relay information without me going in there and boogering it up. More power to the guys who do that. Everybody's got their own style, their own method. For me, that's just not as fun. I kind of like the guessing game. that's the fun part for me. So yeah, I'll definitely be hitting the woods here in Illinois and in Wisconsin multiple times before season, and that kind of brings me to something I've alluded to a little bit earlier here, which was having the summers off. So me being a teacher, this just finished my 14th year teaching, and that means for the last 14 summers, I have sweated my balls off scouting deer in the summertime. And there has not been a single summer where I haven't made at least 10 trips into the woods in the heat of summer, because that's just what I do. I don't want that to be misconstrued, though, for those of you who are listening for like an educational purpose. I don't want you to go and believe that this is the best time to scout. It is absolutely not. Post scouting or like post season, I would say February, March, April, by far your best times to get your scouting in. There's no arguing that. There's no doubt. You can still see all the rut sign, foliage is down, so much easier to get a lay of the land. That's the most opportune time. Why is summer the most opportune time for me? Because it's when I have the time. Any time you have to spend in the woods is the right time. That's for sure. So is it more ideal to be able to see in February? Yeah, of course. But you can bet your ass I'm going to make it to the woods if I've got a 4-hour stretch in the middle of July where I've got nothing to do and it's below 95 degrees. I'm going. It is way more difficult to see sign, but everything is still there. You just have to be more careful and more diligent when you're scouting in order to find it. Lucky for me, I'm not much of a scrape hunter at all. You can still find scrapes. I was up collecting some cameras with my dad this last week, and it's late June, and I found 8 or 9 twisted, broken licking branches that you couldn't tell there was a scrape there, but you could sure as hell tell that there was licking branches there. So it's all there. It's all visible. Anytime you can spend in the woods is good time. And I think the number one thing you'll learn in doing summer scouting is where these deer are bedding now, where they like to call home now, is so different than where they like to call home in the fall. They still visit their fall bedding areas, but man, right now, if you can get into any kind of open grassy stuff where they can stand up, catch some breeze, and get the bugs off of them, that's where they're going to be. They absolutely love it. If you go walk through that kind of stuff, you're going to jump bucks out of it. Great place to get some cameras is on any edge near openings like that. I'm not talking fields, I'm talking grassy, brushy, browse-filled, food-rich environments. But those are dynamite spots, and they will be for the first couple of weeks of season. For many times down here in southeastern Wisconsin, a lot of times they're good until pheasant hunting opens. Once pheasant hunting opens and you get a lot of dogs and people pushing birds through that, they tend to vacate those areas a little bit more. But that's the kind of stuff early season that really gets you going. And if you can find some clusters of rubs around there where it looks like it's those smaller early season thrashing kind of rubs, those take note of that. Mark that on your maps. It's amazing what fresh dirt will do to get you summer pictures, meaning right now just about every square inch of the woods is covered in something. It's covered in some kind of grass, ferns, just about everything is covered with something growing. If you rip up a 5x5 foot area, really rip it up, pull grass out, work your boots down deep into that mud, those deer can smell that from a long ways away, and they will definitely come check it out. Especially you spray a little meepee in there, you'll get some pictures on your camera. So that's one thing I wanted to mention with the summer scouting is, don't put it off just because you've heard it's not great. I found a lot of good spots that I would not have hunted if it hadn't been for summer scouting. So the ability is definitely still there. Yeah, so I did some walking up by the cabin, which is in the Nicolet National Forest, with my dad to pull a couple cameras. The ticks were absolutely horrible in the clear cuts because there was all sorts of grass and blackberry bushes, but the ticks seemed to be sitting on that grass on any old skid road because I'm sure that's where the animals are walking. They can smell that CO2. But man, I had ticks all over me. But like I said, we found some really good scrapes, found some good areas. My dad took me to a spot that he recently hung 2 cameras at near a creek. Also, his cameras are not on the water, but they're close. There was a great big rub along this little feeder creek that he had found, and that got him pretty excited. So he did some walking around there. It's a really nice spot. He had an idea for a stand. We kind of talked about some ideas, and one little light bulb kind of went off in my mind, and I thought I'd share it. Most people, I think, if you found this podcast, you probably already think like this, but just in case you don't. So what my dad was kind of looking at, and I see where he's coming from because I would have done this too. But there's this little feeder creek that kind of runs east-west, and it dumps into the main branch of the creek that kind of runs north-south. And it's not quite that square, that 90 degrees east, west, north, south. They kind of like meander and, they create this point of woods. The point of woods is hardwoods up on top and the high ground. And the perimeter is all hemlocks, and then it's spruce, pine down below mixed with alders. Well, the deer have some trails crossing in one particular spot. They're paralleling the feeder creek, and then they come up this low area on the side of the ridge here that's like on the point between the feeder and the main creek. There's a nice little divot or dent in the ridge, and these deer are piling up there. I mean, big worn out trails. And then once you get up on top, there's another trail that parallels the ridge, and there is a big trail that cuts across the hardwoods toward the main creek, toward what I would assume is another creek crossing. So there's a bunch of trails up there. There's a bunch of old rubs up there. Looks really good. And my dad's telling me, yeah, I think I might set a ladder stand here for myself or for my mom. It's a pretty easy spot to get to. And I said, yeah, the spot looks really good. Good trails, good movement through here. As long as they're moving. I said, where do you think they're coming from? Well, we're not too sure. So we took a little walk around. There's a marsh not far away. Okay, they could be coming from that marsh. So that was a good point. And I said, well, where are you thinking of putting the stand? And the idea was right up on top of that knob where the rubs were. These all trails kind of come out, and it opens up right where the hemlocks stop, come up the ridge out of the creek bottom. Excuse me. It's all thick hemlocks. And then all of a sudden, maybe about 15 yards from the edge, it really opens up. And he's saying, right about here, I think, which is right at the highest point, right where you get some shooting, classic spot that you'd want to hang your stand. And I said, Dad, I don't think you should hang your stand there. And he said, no, you don't think so? I said, nope. I see why you want to hang it there, but I said, I know you guys are going to hunt this in the afternoon. You're going to come in. Any deer that's going to come to this spot is going to come from below you at some point. You're on the highest spot on this little ridge. Both sides of this ridge slope down to that creek bottom. Any deer that's going to come along that creek bottom where the cover is, they're going to use the thermals. The thermal pull is going to come downhill, especially toward those creeks, and you can get busted before the deer ever is even visible to you. He's like, oh yeah, shit. So we kind of backtracked it and found a spot where you can access along the creek without crossing the main trail that comes close to the creek. And then you can just cross that trail in one spot right by the tree, and right on the edge of the hill before you get up to the top was some kind of dead popple, I think, with a little hemlock right in front of it. Tons of cover. I was like, Dad, hang right there. Your son's going to pull straight down to the creek. The only issue you're going to have is if a deer comes down this one trail where you crossed, but you can shoot it when it gets there. And then all those other trails are uphill of you or upwind if you're thinking about thermal pull in the afternoon, and you got a much better chance of shooting. And he kind of agreed and was like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. So I think that's one of the things that if you're out scouting or getting stand sites prepped, think a little bit more about elevation. Think about your stand as being the point where you're going to pour a pitcher of water, a pitcher of scent, really, but imagine it being a pitcher of water. And wherever you're planning on setting up a stand, climbing into a tree, imagine water's pouring right down that tree in the afternoon, in the evening. Where is that water going? It's going downhill. Think of the path it would take from your exact tree. If a deer comes from whatever path that water would take, the easiest route, downhill, if a deer is coming from that way, that's where they're going to smell you first. Okay, because no matter what the wind is doing, as you know, the thermal pull is going to pull down as soon as that sun goes down, and that scent starts to spread. So I think a lot of times guys might, I didn't see anything, when really deer were coming and they just picked you off first, off of thermals or off of wind. I think those deer smell you. Sometimes they don't blow, and they just go the other way. So that's one kind of little note that was kind of fresh in my mind from this past week, going in the woods, walking with my dad. And I thought I'd pass on as people are starting to maybe start prep stands in the next 2 months. I would definitely think about that. And if you can make an adjustment where we all know that the last 30 minutes is the best time. And that's when the thermals are pulling. And that's why deer are moving then, is because they can negate the wind and they can just take low-lying areas and pick up all those scent streams from surrounding areas just by walking in those low-lying areas. Where's all the buck sign usually? In those low areas. They're thicker and they have the thermal pull. So I would just say maybe make note of that next time you're checking out your stand sites, thinking about areas to set, is how is that afternoon thermal pull going to affect the deer traveling past your location. But yeah, that's all the stuff that's kind of been on my mind recently. Really excited to get this going and talk to a few folks and hear some strategies, some ideas, some encounters and stories, of course, of what's made them the deer hunter that they are today. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Really excited to get dropping pins. We'll call it season 2 started up. Tomorrow, I'm actually jumping on with Pierce from the Wisconsin Sportsman podcast. He asked if I would be a guest to talk. I think we're going to talk about Northwoods deer hunting, so that should be fun. I'm sure this podcast will get posted after that one, but you can definitely check that out. Just look up the Wisconsin Sportsman podcast, and you'll be able to hear that. Otherwise, definitely go check out the Okayest Hunter podcast and the dozen or more other podcasts on the network. Show those guys some love. Thanks for hanging out. And I hope you guys are getting pumped up for deer season. I know I am. I'm flipping onto my mapping apps like probably at least 3 times a day right now, maybe more. So yeah, the brain is definitely switching into whitetail mode, and having the summer off to really think about that stuff is not helping. So I hope you guys are having a good one. Beat the heat. Enjoy your summer with family and friends, and buckle up, get yourself prepared for upcoming deer season. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. That'll wrap this episode up. And we'll be back next week. Have a good one.